I woke up to the sound of a bulldozer. Not a car, not a lawnmower, a full-blown construction-grade metal-eating, land-flattening bulldozer. At first, I thought it was a dream. You know, one of those weird ones where your house is suddenly under attack by farm equipment. But then the vibration started rattling my window. My bed was shaking like I was in a cheap motel next to a train track. I rolled over, still half asleep, and peeked through my blinds. And what do I see? Not a squirrel, not a neighbor walking their dog, but a yellow bulldozer on my land. And standing next to it, Linda, wearing a sun hat big enough to block out the actual sun, holding a Starbucks iced latte like it was a royal scepter. She had one hand on her hip and the other waving at me like she was queen of the suburbs. No joke. Full pageantry. I stared at her for a solid 10 seconds, hoping she'd vanish like a mirage. She didn't. I threw on a hoodie, some flip-flops, and ran outside like a man whose property rights were under siege, which I guess they were. The bulldozer driver paused mid-scoop, clearly confused about what was happening. I waved my arms like a maniac. "Excuse me. What is going on here?" Linda turned to me slowly, sipping her latte with the smug satisfaction of someone who's absolutely convinced they're doing God's work. "Oh, Kevin," she said, like I was some long-lost relative she just ran into at a brunch buffet. "Didn't think you'd be up this early." "I live right there," I said, pointing to my house. "This is literally the edge of my backyard." She looked around as if seeing the area for the first time. "Oh, this land?" she said, gesturing vaguely like it was some unclaimed island in the Caribbean. "Sweetheart, this land's been neglected for years. We're just revitalizing it." Revitalizing it. Like she was running some suburban Habitat for Humanity program, except instead of helping people, she was helping herself to my property. "Linda," I said, trying to stay calm, "this is my land. I have the deed. You're building a house, a mansion, on it." She actually had the nerve to chuckle. "Oh, honey, it's not a mansion. It's a sustainable luxury cottage. And anyway, you can't really own this land. I mean, you've never done anything with it." My brain short-circuited. "So let me get this straight," I said. "Because I didn't personally develop this little triangle of earth. You just claimed it?" She shrugged. "Use it or lose it, I always say." This wasn't just annoying. It was unreal. A woman who enforces the color of your mailbox was now playing real-life Monopoly on my lawn. I looked at the bulldozer guy. "Hey, man, did she tell you this was her land?" He shrugged. "I don't know. I just get orders. Permits filed under HOA Project Lot 12 expansion." Lot 12 was Linda's house. My land sat right next to her backyard. But it wasn't hers. It never was. And now? Now she was trying to absorb it into her HOA empire like she was some kind of neighborhood Napoleon. Well, Napoleon met his Waterloo. And Linda, she was about to meet me in court. But first, I needed to call my lawyer, print some maps, and maybe scream into a pillow for 5 minutes. Because I just realized this wasn't going to be a small misunderstanding. It was war. And the battleground was my backyard. My name's Kevin. I'm 31, allergic to drama, mildly obsessed with nachos, and I like to think of myself as a pretty laid-back guy. I mind my own business. I pay my taxes. I wave politely to neighbors even when they pretend not to see me. I'm the kind of person who would rather spend a Saturday binge-watching nature documentaries than argue about property lines. So you can imagine how confused I was when I found myself accidentally going to war with the local HOA. But before we get to the legal battles, flamingo statues, and public humiliation, not mine, thankfully, let me tell you a little about the land that started it all. It wasn't much, just a weird leftover triangle of land behind my house that nobody really knew what to do with. My grandpa, God rest his stubborn soul, bought it back in the 70s for $300 and a handshake, thinking it would eventually be worth millions. It wasn't. For years, it just sat there, overgrown with weeds, visited only by raccoons and the occasional confused squirrel. Even the lawnmowers gave it a pass. Neighbors thought it was a drainage ditch or a forgotten utility zone. But technically, legally, and 100% officially, it was mine. My grandpa left it to me in his will, along with a snow globe collection, a box of mismatched screws, and a letter that said, "One day, this land will matter." I laughed when I read that letter. I mean, what kind of dramatic movie-style prophecy was that? Spoiler alert, he was right. For the first few years, I did absolutely nothing with that land. I didn't even step foot on it. I worked from home doing tech support, played too many video games, and lived a chill, horror-avoiding lifestyle. The only time I ever heard from the HOA was when they sent one of those passive-aggressive newsletters reminding us not to paint our mailboxes in offensive shades of yellow. But everything changed the day I saw those little neon survey flags poking out of the weeds like they were planning a parade. That land, the useless, neglected triangle, was suddenly the hottest piece of real estate on the block. And the woman trying to take it? None other than Linda, our HOA president, unofficial queen of the neighborhood, and self-declared guardian of suburban order and beauty. She drove a Lexus, has 3 purebred poodles named after British royalty, and genuinely believed her garden gnome collection was a form of high art. The moment she sniffed around my land like a bloodhound in heels, I knew something was off. You see, Linda didn't ask about the land. She assumed. She assumed it was hers, assumed I didn't care, and assumed I wouldn't fight back. To be fair, everyone assumed I wouldn't fight back. And for a while, they were right. I didn't really want to deal with it. I mean, who wants to go up against an HOA president who treats bylaws like Bible verses and carries around color-coded folders? But there was something about the way she looked at me. Like I was invisible. Like I didn't matter. Like I was just some background character in her perfectly landscaped kingdom. And that flipped a switch in me, because I may be laid back. But I'm not a doormat. I wasn't going to let some neighborhood tyrant take over what was mine just because she had a Pinterest board full of mansion ideas and a team of gardeners. So yeah, that weird little triangle of land, it was about to become the most important piece of dirt in town. And I was about to become a very unexpected problem for the HOA. Her name was Linda, but in our neighborhood, we all called her Karen. You know the type. Every street has one. The woman who smiles just enough to make you uneasy. The kind of person who's always watching, not in a helpful neighborhood, watch kind of way, but in a did you forget to bring your trash bin in by 9:01 a.m. kind of way. Karen was a lifestyle, and Linda? She embodied it like she had copyrighted the term. Officially, she was our HOA president. Unofficially, she was the suburban version of a Bond villain. She wore crisp iron tennis outfits even though no one had seen her near a court. She had 3 poodles, each with their own stroller. And yes, she wore heels to mow her lawn. Not wedges, not platforms. Actual click-clacking stilettos, as if she was auditioning for America's Next Top Neighbor. People thought it was charming until they crossed her. See, Linda didn't just care about the neighborhood. She controlled it. Like a HOA overlord with a passive-aggressive iron fist, she once fined a family $200 for using a beige curtain that wasn't community-approved beige. Another time, she made a teenager repaint his bike shed because it was too enthusiastic a shade of blue. But what truly made Linda a Karen of Olympic level wasn't just her rule obsession. It was how she delivered it. She didn't yell. She didn't threaten. No, Linda weaponized politeness. She'd knock on your door with a warm smile, holding a tray of gluten-free lemon bars, and casually hand you a citation for excessive dandelion behavior on lawn. And then she'd say, "We all want the best for our little community, don't we?" The answer was always yes, because no one dared say no while eating her judgment-flavored lemon bars. Now, if you're wondering how she got this much power, simple. She ran unopposed for HOA president every year. No one else wanted the job. I mean, who wants to manage hedge links and garbage can etiquette? Linda did. Oh, she thrived in it. Every meeting was her stage. Every bylaw, her script. Every vote, a standing ovation. For herself. Her yard had won Yard of the Month 3 times in a row. She framed the awards. She even made her own plaques because the HOA ones lacked taste. And let's not forget the newsletter, the Weekly Whisper. Yeah, that was the name of our HOA newsletter. And guess who wrote, edited, and delivered every single issue? That's right, Linda. The same woman who once published a 4-page expose titled, "Who Left Their Christmas Lights Up Until January 8th?" Spoiler, it was me. I was the Who. Linda made it her mission to beautify the neighborhood, one passive-aggressive notice at a time. But what nobody saw coming was her next move. Because for all her trophies, her topiary sculptures, and her HOA worship, Linda had one goal left: expansion. Her house was lovely. Her yard was flawless. But it wasn't enough. No, Linda had a vision. A modern suburban estate that would blend minimalist architecture with regal elegance. And to make that vision real, she needed land. Guess whose land she set her perfectly manicured eyes on? Mine. That forgotten, triangle-shaped patch of overgrown weeds and neglected dreams. To her, it wasn't just dirt, it was an opportunity. And she wanted it, not by asking, not by negotiating, but by bulldozing, fencing, and smiling while she claimed it was always part of the HOA master plan. Let me tell you something. Linda may have been the queen of cul-de-sac drama, but she just picked a fight with the wrong neighbor. You know those little neon survey flags you sometimes see stuck in the ground? Bright pink, orange, or blue? The kind of things kids pull out and pretend they're treasure markers? Well, one morning I stepped outside with my coffee, looked toward my useless little triangle of land, and nearly spit out my drink. It was covered in them. Little flags everywhere, lined up like a mini circus had come to town and left their decorations behind. I stood there in my robe, staring like a confused grandpa at a tech convention. I counted maybe 20 flags, zigzagging in a neat little pattern. That's weird, I thought. Is the city finally doing something with this land? Sewer maintenance, fiber internet. Spoiler, I was wrong. And not the fun kind of wrong. The how is this even legal kind of wrong. I walked over to get a better look, and that's when I saw them. 3 guys in neon vests, measuring tape stretched across my dirt, one guy holding blueprints like he was about to build a skyscraper on it. I approached carefully, still in flip-flops and hoodie, holding my coffee like it was a weapon. Hey, what's going on here?" One of the workers looked up, chewing gum like this was just another Tuesday. "We're starting prep work," he said. I blinked. "Prep for what?" He glanced at his clipboard. "Foundation markers for a new extension. Big one. 5-bedroom layout. Gonna be fancy." I squinted. "An extension for who?" He flipped a page. "Linda Sutton? Oh, lady, this was part of her new build." Now I laughed. Out loud. "Wait, on this land?" He nodded. "Yep." I took a long, dramatic sip of my coffee. "On whose land again?" Hers?" That's when I realized we had hit a full-blown sitcom moment. Like, the audience laughter track should have kicked in kind of moment. Because plot twist? It was definitely not hers. Let me be clear. This wasn't a case of close call or borderline confusion. This was blatant land grab territory. The land these guys were staking out wasn't near her yard. It was a whole 25 feet beyond her fence line. I told the crew, "Guys, I own this land. It's been in my family for decades." They all kind of froze. One guy looked at the other like, "Did you check the parcel number again?" The clipboard guy awkwardly smiled and said, "Hey, we're just hired hands, man. You want to take it up with the boss lady." I turned toward Linda's house. Of course. There she was, standing on her back porch, sipping from a ridiculously tall glass of cucumber water like she was auditioning for Real Housewives of the HOA. She waved at me again. Not apologetically. Not like, "Oops, misunderstanding." No. It was a smug 2-finger wave, the kind you give someone right after stealing their parking spot. I called out, "Linda, are you building something on my land?" She smiled back and said, "Oh, Kevin, didn't realize you were still using it." Still using it? As if I'd abandoned a bicycle on her lawn, not a legally owned chunk of property. That's when the blood drained from my face and the coffee kicked in. I knew then that this wasn't some cute little mix-up. This wasn't some honest mistake. This was strategic. Linda had plans. She had blueprints. She had workers. She had permits, or so she claimed. And she was banking on one thing, that I wouldn't notice, that I wouldn't care. That I'd just roll over like everyone else had when she flexed her HOA crown. Well, guess what? I may have been quiet. I may have been quiet. I may have ignored her newsletter rants. I may have let the curtain citation go without a fight. But I wasn't about to let her steal a whole chunk of land just because she wanted to install a second breakfast nook. Oh no. This was the beginning, and she had no idea what was coming next. After seeing survey flags on my land and watching Linda sip smugly from her cucumber goblet, like Cleopatra of the cul-de-sac, I realized I couldn't just stand there and argue with construction workers holding blueprints like prop swords. I needed hard evidence. So I did what any confused, half-caffeinated man in a hoodie would do. I drove straight to the county recorder's office. Now, if you've never been to a county land office, let me paint the picture. Fluorescent lighting, carpet that looks like it survived 3 world wars, and a waiting room full of people who all look vaguely upset about something involving dirt. One guy next to me was literally arguing with a clerk about ancestral goat rights. I kid you not. I walked up to the desk and asked, "Hey, I need property maps." "Parcel num 374B6, I think. Should be under the name Kevin Hughes. Or maybe Harold Hughes, my grandpa." The clerk looked like she hadn't smiled since 2009. She tapped on her keyboard with exactly 2 fingers and said, "It's still in the system. You're the legal owner of parcel 374B6. Want a printout?" "Yes, and if possible, a large version I can slap someone in the face with metaphorically." She didn't laugh, but she did give me a map. I unrolled it right there on the counter. And there it was, the triangle. My triangle. A weird sliver of land sandwiched between 2 standard backyards, poking into the cul-de-sac like a tiny thorn no one ever paid attention to. Except now someone had. And here's where things got really interesting. That triangle, it jutted directly into the back edge of Linda's yard. Not adjacent. Not close. It literally carved into her fence line like a slice of pizza missing from a round pie. If someone looked at the map casually, they'd probably assume it was just an extension of her property. But look a little closer, and it became crystal clear. It wasn't hers. It never was. And according to the coordinates and survey markers, she was about to build a mansion on top of something she didn't legally own. You ever have one of those moments where the universe just hands you a gotcha on a silver platter? This was mine. But here's the kicker. When I brought the map back home and compared it to what was happening on the ground, something was off. Slightly off. Like, suspiciously off. The construction markers didn't just overlap my land by mistake. They were deliberately angled to cover the majority of it. Her new blueprint extended over 90% of the triangle, with a foundation footprint that barely grazed the legal boundary of her actual lot. Now, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I don't think Big Poodle is secretly running the HOA. But come on, this wasn't some innocent blueprint fumble. This felt calculated. Like someone had studied that map for months, realized my land was unused, assumed I'd never noticed, and decided if it's ugly and unkempt, it's basically mine now. Who does that? I'll tell you who. Linda Karen Worthington III. Okay, I made up the 3-part, but it feels right, doesn't it? Anyway, the facts were now undeniable. I owned the land. She was building on it. And she was hoping I'd be too lazy, too confused, or too polite to stop her. She clearly hadn't done her homework. Because while I might wear Crocs in public and microwave fish in the office break room, long story, I was not going to let her walk away with a free slice of real estate just because she thought it was aesthetically aligned with her vision. Nope. The gloves were coming off. And next, it was time to confront Her Royal Highness face to face, with maps in hand. After reviewing the map, measuring the markers, and convincing myself that I hadn't suddenly lost all sense of spatial awareness, I did what any reasonable property-owning adult would do when their land is being swallowed up. I marched over to Karen's castle. It was 4:27 p.m. Prime HOA power hour. Linda's front porch looked like a magazine cover, not a leaf out of place. Doormat that said, "Welcome to the neighborhood, but don't stay too long." Ferns on either side, perfectly symmetrical. I knocked once. She didn't answer. I knocked again, louder. Still nothing. Just when I thought she might be dodging me, the door swung open like she'd been waiting behind it the whole time. And there she stood, Linda in all her suburban splendor. Hair sprayed into a helmet, pearls that jingle when she moved, and a white blouse that practically screamed, "I filed 3 zoning complaints before breakfast." In one hand, her ever-present goblet of cucumber water, the HOA Holy Grail. "Kevin," she said, as if I was an old friend dropping by for cookies, not a man holding a rolled-up survey map like a weapon. "To what do I owe the pleasure?" I forced a smile. "Hi, Linda. Quick question, did you know you're building on my land?" She took the slowest sip imaginable. I swear I saw a single cucumber slice swirl dramatically near the surface. Then she looked me dead in the eyes and replied, with the calm of a snake sunbathing, "Oh, sweetie, that dirt patch? It's practically part of our aesthetic now." I blinked. "Excuse me?" She gave me the kind of patronizing smile usually reserved for toddlers or people who ask if almond milk comes from actual almonds. "It's just that, well, you've never done anything with it," she said, gesturing vaguely in the direction of the triangle. "It's so overgrown. Ugly. The neighbors have even said it's a bit of an eyesore." So I thought, why not elevate the space? Elevate it? You mean take it? She tilted her head, as if I'd misunderstood her generosity. "Kevin, darling, nobody ever cared about that patch of land until I did. In a way, I've added value to your property." I actually laughed. It came out more like a confused cough. "Linda, you didn't add value. You brought in bulldozers. You posted foundation markers. You're literally pouring concrete on land you don't own." She waved her hand. "Let's not be so dramatic." Dramatic? This isn't an episode of Real Housewives of HOA. This is theft. Her smile faltered for just a second, like her HOA matrix had glitched. Then she composed herself. "Look, Kevin, I'm sure we can come to some friendly arrangement. After all, we're neighbors." "You mean like a lease?" I said, baiting her. She shrugged. "Perhaps. Or maybe a small honorary title in the HOA. Assistant to the treasurer, maybe." "Assistant to the—" "Okay." I wasn't sure whether to laugh, scream, or both. This woman was actually trying to bribe me with HOA power. I'd sooner eat glass. I held up the map. "Linda, this isn't a suggestion. This land is mine. You're trespassing. And if construction doesn't stop immediately, I'll be calling a lawyer." Her smile disappeared completely now. "You wouldn't." I smiled right back. "I would. I already have." And with that, I turned around and walked off her porch like a man who just dropped a mic survey map still rolled in my fist like a scroll of justice. She didn't follow. She just stood there, sipping her water, glaring into the middle distance like a Disney villain whose spell didn't work. But I knew better. This wasn't over. Not even close. So after my little porch confrontation with Linda, a.k.a. the Duchess of HOA, I thought, surely she'll back off. She knows I'm serious now. Spoiler alert, she didn't. In fact, the very next day, I got an email inviting me to a special HOA community meeting regarding boundary disputes and neighborhood harmony. Translation, Kevin, please come be publicly humiliated. But I went, because I had facts. I had maps. I had a folder with the words Exhibit A, my land, written in Sharpie. I was ready to be the calm voice of reason in a sea of ornamental hedges and passive-aggressive biscotti. The meeting was held in the community clubhouse, a room that smelled like cinnamon potpourri and unspoken resentment. The walls were decorated with framed photos of past HOA presidents, and I swear every single one of them looked like they'd never lost an argument in their lives. I took a seat in the back. Linda, of course, was already at the front table. She wore a cream-colored power blazer and had a notepad open like she was preparing for a United Nations address. "Let's begin," she said cheerfully. "Thank you all for coming to discuss a small misunderstanding that has been greatly exaggerated by one of our newer residents." Oh, it was on. She stood up, cleared her throat, and said with mock concern, "We all know and love Kevin." Already false. But unfortunately, He seems to be emotionally attached to a weed-infested corner of dirt behind my property. She gestured dramatically toward a slideshow. Yes, she brought a slideshow, showing pictures of my triangle of land from the worst angles possible. One photo literally had a raccoon digging through a pile of leaves, like it was auditioning for Animal Planet. He's being unreasonable, she said, voice soft like a kindergarten teacher. We're simply trying to beautify an area that's been neglected for years. I mean, look at this mess. And then, it happened. Applause. Actual applause. From real adult human beings who clapped like she just cured HOA boredom with the power of landscaping. I sat there in shock, mouth half open, like I'd walked into a town hall in opposite land. I raised my hand. "Excuse me," I said, standing up in my folder. "Just for the record, that mess is on my legally owned property, and the only reason it's been untouched is because it's not part of any HOA jurisdiction." Linda chimed in, "Technically, it falls within our visual boundary, which gives us certain rights under Clause 6.4b. I flipped open the bylaws. No, it doesn't. Clause 6.4b refers to shared spaces, not private parcels of land, especially ones clearly deeded to an individual. A murmur rippled through the crowd. One guy whispered, "He brought the bylaws." I continued, "I have copies of the county parcel maps, my grandfather's deed, and an attorney's letter confirming I own that land outright. Linda's construction is trespassing, plain and simple." Linda's smile tightened. "Kevin, we don't need to make this ugly." I held up a photo. "You already made it ugly. With bulldozers. On my lawn." The crowd was silent now. No clapping. No lemon bars. Just awkward chair squeaks and a cough from someone probably regretting their earlier applause. But Linda wasn't done. She flipped her hair and tried one last power move. "We'll be voting on whether the HOA supports the bill or not." I raised an eyebrow. "You can vote all you want, but you don't vote on private property law. That's decided in court." Boom. A guy in the back whispered. He lawyered up. "Yeah, I did." Linda sat down. No more smiling. No more sips of cucumber water. Just tight lips and cold glares. The meeting ended shortly after, and as people left the room, a few neighbors gave me nods. One guy even whispered, "About time someone stood up to her." That night I didn't sleep much, but not because I was worried. Because I knew I had officially declared war, and for the first time, Linda knew it too. You'd think after the HOA meeting, a full-blown public spectacle where I basically held up a mirror to Linda's empire of nonsense, that she might step back. Maybe even issue an awkward apology, or at the very least, stop trying to build a Greek villa on my property. But no, because Linda wasn't just an HOA president. She was an HOA general, and I had just made myself her top enemy. Exactly 1 week after the meeting from hell, I opened my mailbox and pulled out a letter. A violation notice. Now, I've received junk mail before. Coupons, political flyers, even an invitation to a pyramid scheme masquerading as a Tupperware party. But this was personal. The envelope was stamped with the O's official seal, a golden acorn. Because apparently nothing says authoritarian suburbia like a majestic nut. Inside was a bright orange notice written in Comic Sans, like this was a third-grade birthday invite, not a legal threat. The offense? Violation refused receptacle visible from public view. Time of infraction, 3:02 p.m. date. Exactly 1 week after the meeting. Fine, $50, payable within 10 days or subject to lien escalation. Let me be clear, my trash bin had been on the side of my house, not in the middle of the street. Not blocking a fire hydrant. Not doing cartwheels across the lawn. It was behind a bush. Like, barely visible, and only if you leaned over the sidewalk at a specific angle and squinted like you were trying to read ancient Sanskrit in the rain. At 3:02 p.m. Who even times that? Was Linda out there with binoculars and a stopwatch like some kind of HOA Batman? I stood in my driveway, holding the letter, fuming. I looked around. The wind rustled. A sprinkler turned on. Somewhere, a bird judged me from a tree. That's when I knew this was war. Not over property. Not even over that weird triangle of dirt. This was a full-scale petty battle now. Linda had officially escalated conflict from paperwork and passive aggression to weaponized bureaucracy. I called my buddy Mark, my real estate attorney and now unofficial life coach. "Hey," I said, reading the notice over the phone. "Can they fine me for this?" Mark snorted. "They can try, but the enforcement clause in most HOAs has to follow due process. And if you want, I can file a counter notice and request arbitration. Want to go nuclear?" I paused, looking over at Linda's house. It sparkled with HOA-approved perfection, not a blade of grass out of place. But now I saw it for what it really was, a fortress of pettiness. "Nuclear," I said. "Absolutely. Let's go full petty Cold War." That weekend, I built a miniature privacy fence in front of the trash bin, 3 feet high, entirely legal. Painted it neon orange. I even added a tiny sign that said, "Now invisible at 3:02 p.m. I uploaded a photo to the neighborhood Facebook group. No caption, just vibes. It got 38 likes. Linda replied with a thumbs down emoji in the comment, "Some people don't take community standards seriously." I replied, "Some people don't understand private property law." Boom. The gloves were officially off. This wasn't a disagreement anymore. I wasn't just dealing with a neighbor who overstepped. I was facing off with a suburban dictator, ruling with citations, clipboards, and cruelty disguised as community concern. But she had no idea who she was messing with. Because I wasn't just defending my land anymore. I was defending my dignity. After the trash bin war began and I had officially become Linda's public enemy #1, I knew it was time to stop playing defense. I had tried reasoning. I had tried facts. I had even tried a neon orange mini privacy fence. None of it worked. Linda was still out here acting like HOA Napoleon, conquering property she didn't own and lobbing violation notices like grenades made of glitter and bylaws. So I made the call. To my ace in the hole, my secret weapon, my old college buddy Mark Benson, real estate attorney, legal pit bull in khakis, and a man forever in my debt because I once helped him move 6 couches up 3 flights of stairs during a thunderstorm. Don't ask why he had that many couches. I dialed his number. He picked up on the 3rd ring. "Kev, you still alive?" "Barely. I'm under siege." "Let me guess, Linda?" "Bro, she's building a mansion on my land." Dead silence. Then Mark goes, "Wait, like, actually on it? Blueprints, concrete, survey flags, the whole 9 yards. She's turning my triangle into the HOA Taj Mahal." He whistled. "Okay. Now that's bold. You got the documents?" "Yep. Map, deed, county records, all confirmed. It's mine. She never asked, never offered. Just bulldozed like she was entitled." Mark laughed the way only a lawyer does when someone else's drama is about to make their week more interesting. "You want to sue?" I paused. See, that's the beauty of calling someone who knows the system inside out. He wasn't shocked. He wasn't overwhelmed. He was already thinking 2 steps ahead. Like a chess grandmaster but with briefcases and sarcasm. He continued, "Option A. We file a cease and desist, take her to court, and stop construction immediately. You will win, no doubt. She's trespassing, violating property law, possibly committing civil fraud depending on her permits. Sounds fun." Option B, Mark's voice dropped a tone. You let her build. Let her finish the whole thing. Then you remind her it's on your land, and you sell it back to her for yacht money. I sat in silence. A yacht's worth of cash? The same Linda who fined me $50 for a trash bin at 3:02 p.m. could end up cutting me a check with a comma in it, just to keep her marble countertops? Tempting. Very tempting. But then I remembered the smug look on her face, the slow cucumber water sip, the HOA meeting slideshow that featured my land's raccoon activity in full HD. No, 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 no. She doesn't get off that easy, I told Mark. I'm not giving her the option to buy me out. I want her to regret ever touching my dirt. He chuckled. That's the Kevin I know. Vindictive with a moral compass. Send her everything. Legal letters. Threat of injunction. Mention my great-grandfather if you have to. Let her know the hammer's coming. You got it. We hung up, And for the first time since the bulldozer showdown, I felt calm. This wasn't about property anymore. It was about principle, about justice, about putting an end to the HOA tyranny that had gone unchecked for years. And let's be honest about watching Linda try to backpedal out of this mess in her designer heels. I leaned back in my chair, cracked open a soda, and stared out at that weird, overgrown triangle of land. Funny, people always laughed at it, said it was worthless, pointless. But now it was the most powerful triangle in town. And Linda had no idea the legal storm I was about to roll through her marble-tiled dreams. And maybe, just maybe, the dignity of every trash bin in the neighborhood. So here's the part of the story where a normal, reasonable person would stop. After receiving an official cease and desist letter from a real estate attorney, most people would panic, pump the brakes, maybe send over a fruit basket and awkwardly mutter, "Let's talk about this." But Linda didn't just ignore the warning. She doubled down. I woke up one morning, walked outside in my usual hoodie flip-flop combo, and just stood there slack-jawed because right before my eyes, rising from my land, was a Greek column monstrosity. I'm talking full-on suburban palace vibes. It had scaffolding, concrete mixers, contractors with clipboards, and one guy carefully measuring the slope of a custom stone staircase like he was building the entrance to Mount Olympus. At the base of this construction zone was a crew laying down what looked suspiciously like the beginnings of a fountain. Not a bird bath, not a garden feature. An actual water-spewing marble monster of a fountain that belonged in front of a royal museum, not next to my trash bin. I nearly choked on my coffee. I marched over to the boundary line, staying exactly on my side, and yelled to one of the workers, "Hey, didn't you guys get the legal notice?" He squinted at me. "You mean that lawyer letter?" "Yeah, the boss lady said it's being handled." Handled. Like this was a small accounting error and not an active land heist. At that moment, Linda herself emerged from the construction area, hard hat balanced on top of her blowout, like she was starring in the Real Housewives of construction sites. "Oh, Kevin," she called out sweetly, as if I hadn't literally threatened her with legal action just 2 days earlier. "Isn't it coming along so beautifully?" I was speechless. She gestured proudly to the framework of what was clearly a 3-car garage being constructed across the entire width of my triangle-shaped land. "We decided to go with a Tuscan-inspired look," she added, "so the neighborhood has a more cohesive aesthetic." "Linda," I said, voice tight, "you're building on my property. The part under that garage, that's mine." She sipped from a fresh cucumber water. Where is she even getting these? And said calmly, "Kevin, don't be so territorial. It's just land. Dirt." And honestly, it wasn't doing anything before. "Oh, sorry." I shot back. "I forgot that if I don't landscape something in 3 months, it becomes public domain." She gave a little shrug. "You know how the HOA feels about visual harmony. Lady, you're building a Golden Gate and a porch shaped like a Roman amphitheater. Visual harmony is long gone." I watched as more workers arrived, glass installers, tile experts, a guy with what looked like a chandelier in a box the size of a fridge. She was building a mansion, and not just any mansion, the kind that screams, "I drink imported sparkling water, drive an electric SUV, and have a dog therapist on retainer." It was like watching someone throw a pool party in your bathroom. I called Mark. "She's still building," I hissed. "I'm looking at Corinthian columns on my property." "Did she really go with columns?" "Yes, and a fountain, and possibly a second floor." Mark sighed. "Okay, new plan. We take photos, daily updates, document everything. If she finishes it, she's only digging herself deeper. The more she builds, the more it's worth to you." He was right. Every brick, every tile, every ridiculous poodle-shaped door knocker she installed, it was just more ammo for me. Because here's the thing Linda didn't seem to grasp. You can't just manifest someone else's property into your dream home, especially when the guy who owns it has receipts, a lawyer, and a YouTube-worthy grudge. There's a point in every good story where the protagonist has to level up. You've tried being nice. You've tried talking things out. You've tried common sense and even sarcasm. But when someone builds a marble-floored mansion with a two-story sunroom on your land and dares to call it an aesthetic compromise, it's time to hit the big red button. So I escalated. Mark and I filed an official injunction. For those who don't speak fluent courtroom drama, that's basically a legal stop sign. It's a document that says, hey, you can't keep building here unless you want a judge to personally visit your backyard with a hammer, and not the building kind. And let me tell you, getting an injunction isn't easy. It took paperwork, photos, maps, documentation, and one surprisingly emotional letter from my neighbor's cat. Okay, it was from me, but signed as the cat. But we got it. The court reviewed our evidence. And shocker, the judge was not impressed with Linda's manifestation defense or the fact that she'd never consulted me, the landowner, before bulldozing my triangle of dreams. So the court issued the order. Construction. Must. Stop. Immediately. Boom. Victory. I strutted out of the courthouse like I had just won the final round of a neighborhood reality show. I even treated myself to a celebratory drive-thru milkshake. Chocolate. Extra whipped cream. For a moment, everything felt like it was finally turning in my favor. But then the next morning happened. I stepped outside to get the mail. And what do I see in the distance? Steam. Actual steam rising from the middle of the unfinished mansion. I squinted, blinked, thought maybe it was a mirage or some weird early morning mist. But no, it was very real. Linda, despite the court order, had not stopped building. In fact, she had gone one step further. She had installed a hot tub. On my land. A full-size, bubbling, LED-lit 8-seater tub of audacity. Smack in the center of her illegally constructed patio. I could practically hear the smugness gurgling from the jets. I stood there frozen, trying to understand what was going through this woman's mind. Did she not get the court order? Did she just ignore it? Or, and this became my leading theory, was she legally fearless or functionally illiterate? I took out my phone, snapped a photo, and called Mark immediately. She put in a hot tub, I said. There was a pause on the other end. Then, excuse me? A hot tub. The big kind. It has cup holders. There are rubber ducks floating in it. I can't make this up. You have to be kidding. I wish. Another pause. Kevin, Mark said slowly, this is good. She put a luxury water feature on my land. How is that good? Because now we have her dead to rights. She violated a direct court order. She didn't just ignore your claim. She thumbed her nose at a legal injunction. So, contempt of court? Exactly. Judges love that. And that's when I realized Linda had just handed me the most powerful card in the legal deck. She didn't just break the rules. She broke a judge's rules. All I had to do was show up in court with my photos, my documentation, and my jaw still on the floor, and I'd have every legal right to make her dismantle the whole structure. Or take ownership of it myself. The hot tub? It was the final splash in her sea of arrogance. And soon it would be mine. Court day. The big day. The moment when this suburban soap opera would finally be dragged into the light of legal reality, and I was ready for it. I wore a button-up shirt, tucked in, fresh haircut, printed my documents on actual paper, not the crumpled copies I've been carrying around like a street prophet for the last month. Mark met me outside the courthouse looking like a legal assassin in a navy blue suit and shades. We fist-bumped like we were heading into battle, which, honestly, we were. And then Linda arrived in a white suit. Yes, a full white pantsuit, heels included, like she was either getting married to the HOA or auditioning to play a misunderstood villain in a courtroom drama. She even had a matching purse, a little gold pin shaped like a house, and a Starbucks in hand. Cucumber water wasn't classy enough for the court, apparently. She walked in like she owned the building. The bailiff actually blinked twice, like, is this woman serious? She sat across from me at the defense table like we were in some weird HOA-themed episode of Law and Order, Cul-de-sac Division. The judge walked in. An older man. Stern. Clearly someone who had dealt with his fair share of petty neighbor disputes and was not in the mood for scented folders and Pinterest excuses. We stood. Case number 2023 HL 542. Hughes versus Worthington. He looked over his glasses at us and began. Mr. Hughes, your claim states that the defendant has built a residential structure, namely a home addition on land that legally belongs to you. Do you have documentation? Mark slid our thick, glorious folder across the table like it contained nuclear launch codes. Yes, Your Honor. Deed, survey maps, parcel records, and an issued injunction previously violated by the defendant. Judge flipped through the papers, nodded slowly. And Miss Worthington, your response? Linda stood up like she was on stage at a pageant. Her voice? Calm, composed, pure HOA energy. Your Honor, she began, I believe this is all one big misunderstanding. This patch of land has been unkempt for years. It wasn't being used. I simply beautified it in alignment with the community aesthetic. It's practically become a natural extension of my yard. The judge raised an eyebrow. Ma'am, did you obtain permission from the plaintiff, Mr. Hughes, to build on this land? Linda smiled and delivered the line of the century. I didn't need to. I manifested this property into my life. It's been on my vision board since 2018. I kid you not. She really said that. And then, get this, the courtroom stenographer laughed. You know how serious and robotic those people usually are? This guy literally snorted while typing. Even the bailiff cracked the ghost of a grin. The judge looked at Linda like she had just offered to pay her mortgage and monopoly money. Ma'am, he said slowly, this is not a manifestation hearing. This is a case of legal ownership. You built on land that's not yours. Did you receive at any point explicit permission in writing from Mr. Hughes? Linda blinked. Well, no. But I assumed assumptions do not override deeds. Boom. Hammer sound. Linda tried to regroup. But the neighborhood supports the build. I've beautified it. I even added a hot tub on someone else's land. But it's more valuable now. Surely that should count for something. The judge set her folder down and gave the legal equivalent of a death glare. Ma'am, by that logic, I could build a gazebo on the courthouse lawn and claim it added value. She opened her mouth, closed it again. Mark leaned toward me and whispered, We've got this. And we did. Because this wasn't just a petty land squabble anymore. This was theater. And the court wasn't buying Linda's glamorized version of trespassing. Judgment Day was coming. And Linda? Well, her vision board was about to get legally repossessed. So, after the judge's ruling, clean, clear, and glorious in its simplicity, it was official. The land was mine. Every inch of it. And everything on it? Also mine. That included the grand double-door entrance, the Tuscan-style arches, the second-story reading loft, and yes, the hot tub with floating rubber ducks. All legally mine now. Linda? She was given 30 days to either negotiate or vacate. The gavel had dropped. The HOA crown had tilted. And suddenly, I was the proud owner of the most luxurious construction project in the entire neighborhood, built by someone else's money on my own land without lifting a single hammer. But old Linda wasn't done yet. Not even close. Exactly 4 days after the ruling, I got a knock at my door. I peeked through the peephole, half expecting a flaming bag of HOA bylaws on fire. Instead, there she was. Linda, in a floral blouse, pearl earrings, and that I brought cookies, but also a lawsuit kind of smile. I opened the door slowly. Yes? She inhaled like she was prepping for a TED Talk. Kevin, she began sweetly, I've been thinking. And in the spirit of neighborly compromise, I'd like to make you an offer. I said nothing. Just raised one eyebrow like a TV villain in a courtroom drama. She took that as permission to continue. I've spoken with my advisors, she said, her advisors being her husband, her hairstylist, and probably a Pinterest board, and I'm willing to offer you $20,000 for the land and everything on it. There was a pause. I waited for the punchline. Nothing came. She really meant it. $20,000 for a fully constructed luxury extension with custom tile, radiant flooring, and a hot tub I could Airbnb for $500 a night to bachelorette parties alone. It took everything in me not to laugh. Instead, I leaned against the doorframe and said calmly, Try again, Linda. Add 2 zeros. She blinked, visibly gulped. You mean 200,000? Correct. She gasped like I'd asked her to sell her soul. Which, to be fair, she might have already done to the HOA gods in exchange for eternal control over mailbox colors and acceptable lawn gnome height. "Kevin, be reasonable," she hissed, all her kind neighbor performance evaporating into thin air. "That's extortionate. That's the market rate for a mansion illegally built on land you don't own." "I improved the land." "With what? A hot tub and 14 HOA violations?" Her nostrils flared. "This is absurd. You're being, what's the word, vindictive." "No, I'm being strategic. You rolled the dice. You ignored legal warnings. You went full HGTV without a permission slip. And now I own the prize at the end of the game." Linda stood there frozen, like someone had unplugged her central nervous system. She looked down, then back up. "I can't pay that," she said flatly. "Then you can move out." She blinked. "You'd really force me out? You mean would I reclaim my own land and the luxury estate you illegally built on top of it?" I smiled. "Absolutely." She left without another word. No dramatic closing speech. No parting insult. Just the sound of her clicking heels down the driveway, echoing like a retreating army that had just realized it brought gardening shears to a legal sword fight. And me? I closed the door, poured myself a drink, and toasted to the triangle. Because sometimes the land you never wanted becomes the castle you never asked for. And the petty queen who tried to steal it just ended up paying rent to the guy she used to fine for having visible recycling bins. I swear to you, if someone made this into a Netflix show, people would say it was unrealistic. But this actually happened. Linda, queen of the HOA, destroyer of deeds, defender of decorative driveways, ended up renting her own illegal mansion from me at full market rate. Let me rewind for a second. After our last chat, where she gasped like I'd asked her to mortgage her soul in exchange for her illegally built dream house, she disappeared for a few days. No Facebook posts, no HOA newsletter, no unsolicited notices about my grass being rebelliously long. I figured maybe she was regrouping, maybe planning a final coup with a decorative clipboard and a dramatic reading of the bylaws. Instead, I got an email. Subject line, rental proposal urgent. It was from Linda's personal Gmail. No whole logo. No gold acorn header. Just pure desperation in digital form. She wrote, "Dear Mr. Hughes, after speaking with my family and legal advisors, I've come to the conclusion that it would be in both of our best interests to come to a peaceful, short-term arrangement regarding the current residence. I propose a rental agreement to allow me time to transition and relocate my family with dignity. Please let me know if you're open to discussing terms." Dignity. That word really got me. Because this was the same woman who once fined me $75 for a Halloween gnome holding a plastic axe. So I replied, "Hi, Linda. Happy to discuss a rental agreement. Attached is the lease agreement. 12-month minimum. Market rate. No HOA involvement. P.S. The gnome says hi. I didn't expect her to go for it. But she did. She signed." And just like that, the woman who had tried to steal my land weaponized community bylaws against me and declared visual war on my garbage bin was now my tenant. Let me say that again. Linda was my tenant. Every month, a check would arrive in the mail with her name on it, made out to yours truly. It was poetic. It was beautiful. It was so deliciously ironic that I almost framed the first one. Sometimes I'd stand on the sidewalk, sipping my coffee, just to watch her pull into the driveway of the mansion that technically wasn't hers anymore. Her expression? Somewhere between forced politeness and eternal constipation. She avoided eye contact. But once, as she was wheeling her poodle stroller past me, she muttered under her breath, "This neighborhood has gone downhill." To which I replied, "That's funny. Property values actually increased since I became your landlord." She said nothing, just kept walking. And here's the best part. She had to follow my rules now. No more HOA nonsense. No more fines. No more petty power moves. Instead, I included a clause in her lease that explicitly stated, Tenant agrees not to issue, distribute, enforce, or otherwise engage in any HOA policies, real or imagined, on or within 100 feet of the leased premises. I also banned newsletter printing, because I could. One day, I got a knock on my door. It was the mail carrier, holding a small return package addressed to the Worthington estate. Inside, a ceramic gnome I had thrown out years ago. Linda had kept it, probably as a twisted trophy. Well, now, it was home. I placed it proudly on the edge of the property line facing her master's suite window. It wore sunglasses, held a coffee cup. Its little plaque said, "Landlord mode activated." Oh, how the gnome had turned. And Linda? She now lived under my roof, literally. So by now, I had everything I ever wanted. Linda was renting her own mansion for me. The neighborhood finally knew the truth. The triangle of useless land had become the crown jewel of petty real estate justice. But deep inside me, there still lived a little voice, a whisper from the universe that said, go one step further. And so I did. I gave the world something beautiful, a gift to all the neighbors, to all the petty souls out there, and most importantly, to Linda's front yard. I put up a flamingo statue. Now, I'm not talking about your average plastic big box store lawn flamingo. No. This was art. I found a local sculptor on Etsy named Master Dave, who specialized in oversized lawn creatures made from recycled scrap metal. I commissioned a piece, 7 feet tall, steel frame, rust-resistant, with LED eyes that glowed faintly pink at night, and then I placed it directly in front of the mansion, front and center, facing her living room window like a majestic bird guardian sent from the gods of neighborhood karma. The next morning, I got a text from Linda. Linda, this thing. What is it? Me, it's a flamingo. Linda, it's an affront to taste. My guests are confused. Me, consider it performance art. It represents resilience and irony. She never responded to that one. But I know she saw it. Because that same day, I caught her trying to take photos from weird angles, probably to send to the HOA or a Facebook group titled Stop Suburban Chaos. She tried to ignore it, pretend it didn't exist. But the flamingo had presence. It cast shadows. It had vibes. And the best part? It got famous. I posted a picture on Instagram with a caption, "When your tenant used to fine you for decorative choices, so you level up. Meet Sir Petty the Flamingo." Hashtag Flamingo Justice. Within a week, it went viral. People started sharing it. Sir Petty got his own Instagram page. I don't know how it happened, but within a month, that flamingo had more followers than my personal account. People started tagging it, posing next to it, leaving little offerings at its steel feet. Tiny sunglasses, plastic shrimp. Someone even crocheted a mini scarf for winter. Tourists came by. Someone wrote a Google review. Didn't expect a roadside attraction in a gated community, but wow, 5 stars. Team Kevin Linda? She was livid. She wrote me a formal complaint. As my tenant, I framed it and hung it in my hallway. The flamingo stayed. And just for good measure, I decorated it seasonally. Halloween, vampire cape and fangs. Christmas, Santa hat, red glitter scarf, glowing nose like Rudolph. Valentine's Day, a heart-shaped sign that read, "Love your landlord." Each new outfit was a fresh reminder to Linda that the days of unchecked HOA tyranny were over. I could see it in her face every time she walked past. Every flamingo-themed post, every small crowd that gathered for selfies, every time a neighbor whispered, "I love what you did with the bird," it chipped away at her sense of control. And me? I never said a word. I just smiled, watered the plants, and made sure Sir Petty's LEDs were fully charged. Because this wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was about joy. This was about healing. This was about taking back power, one ridiculous flamingo at a time. And nothing, absolutely nothing, made Linda more miserable than knowing she had to live with it. Eventually, even the most stubborn dictators must admit defeat. Linda moved out. No fireworks, no angry speeches, no final HOA newsletter titled The Flamingo Menace, a Memoir. Just a quiet U-Haul one Saturday morning, a stressed-out husband who avoided eye contact, and three poodles wearing matching sunglasses as they were carefully loaded into the back seat of a Lexus SUV. She didn't even say goodbye, but she did leave behind a short note taped to the door, written in elegant cursive. Some of us value taste and tradition. I hope your Crocs were worth it. Linda, honestly? Fair point. I had once worn bright green Crocs to an HOA meeting, on purpose, with socks. I called them emotional armor, and I would absolutely do it again. So there I stood, alone in front of the mansion she had illegally built on my land, now legally mine. Every column, every granite countertop, every hand-polished poodle-themed door knocker, and I had a decision to make. Sell it? Too easy. Live in it? Too dramatic. Tear it down? Tempting, but no. Instead, I did something that would make Linda roll in her organic cotton sheets. I turned it into an Airbnb, but not just any Airbnb. I called it the Petty Palace. Logo? A flamingo holding a briefcase. Slogan? Come for the comfort, stay for the drama. I leaned fully into the story. The listing read, this luxurious suburban mansion was once built without permission by a notoriously aggressive HOA president on land that did not belong to her. Now it's yours to enjoy, legally and with maximum comfort. I added a framed copy of the court ruling in the entryway. Right above it, a photo of Sir Petty the Flamingo, now standing proudly in a little Zen rock garden out front. Within a month of listing, the Petty Palace was fully booked, non-stop. People came from all over the country just to stay in the house from the viral flamingo case. They loved the story. They loved the revenge. And they really loved the hot tub. Couples use it for romantic getaways. Families booked it for reunions. One guy even proposed to his girlfriend in the reading loft. She said yes. Reviews flooded in. White medium star, white medium star, white medium star, white medium star, white medium star. Came for the tea, stay for the towels. Best revenge story vacation ever. White medium star, white medium star, white medium star, white medium star, white medium star. The host was polite, professional, and had great taste in lawn art. 10 out of 10 would know him again. And my personal favorite, white medium star, 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 white medium star. Didn't know petty justice could be this luxurious. Linda? Well, I heard through the grapevine she moved into a condo with strict rules, 0 pets allowed, and ironically no outdoor decorations. Poetic justice? Absolutely. As for me, I still live in my modest little house down the street. Still wear Crocs. Still wave politely to neighbors. But every time I walk past the Petty Palace, I give a little salute to the place that started it all, the weird triangle of land my grandpa left me. The one everyone said was worthless. Turns out, it was priceless. So yeah, if there's one thing you take away from this story, let it be this: don't build on land that isn't yours. Seriously. It doesn't matter how fancy your Pinterest board is, or how aggressively you manifested something, or how many poodles you own with matching names like Duchess, Countess, and Lady Wiggleton III, because one day that forgotten corner of land you thought no one cared about might belong to someone like me. And trust me, I've got time. I've got receipts. I've got a good lawyer. And I've got a petty streak deeper than your foundation, your hot tub, and your HOA bylaws combined. Linda thought I'd roll over. She thought I'd be intimidated by her title, her tan fountain, and her triple-printed bylaws. But what she didn't count on was resistance. And not just legal resistance. Creative resistance. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't loud. It isn't cruel. It's slow. It's smart. And it's standing tall in the form of a 7-foot flamingo that glows at night and has a better social media presence than most influencers. I turned a headache into income, a feud into fame, a mansion into a message. That triangle of land, the one nobody wanted, it paid off more than any investment I've ever made. Because revenge doesn't always come with fireworks. Sometimes it comes with monthly rent and a signature from the very same person who fined you $50 for a non-ho-ho approved gnome. So here's my advice. White heavy checkmark, check your deeds. White heavy checkmark, respect property lines. White heavy checkmark in whatever you do. Never underestimate the quiet neighbor with a legal folder and Etsy addiction. Oh, and if you ever do find yourself on the wrong end of a lawn flamingo and a cease and desist letter, just walk away. Trust me, it's cheaper. Text on screen, stop sign. Want more hilarious real-life revenge stories that make you say, no way, that actually happened? Thumbs up tab, like if you think Linda got what she deserved. Bell hit subscribe and join the petty army. We drop new stories every week. Speech Balloon got your own HOA horror story? Leave it in the comments. We might feature it next. Thanks for watching. And remember, sometimes the pettiest people make the best landlords. Cue soft outro music. Cut to Sir Petty the Flamingo wearing sunglasses and a cape. Fade out.